And here we've reached the end of the Elentir arc, and I am actually pretty happy about this. Like, not gonna lie, because the thing that had me the most worried about this arc was how fast it seemed to have really developed, and not like entirely. Like, it was once we got like through the Moonlight Beauty gods that we were just like, okay, well, who's left other than Selene? Unless Selene goes and pretty much just acquires people to become the replacements and then powers them up to be equal or stronger than that of the previous Moonlight Beauty gods. The only other option that there could have been for like enemies for like the main cast to fight and whatnot before Selene was if Selene either did that or went and got like her sons and stuff, like went and got her dragon offspring, so it would be a big dragon horde instead of just fighting Selene, which I think would make a lot of sense. Because like the thing is, we know that male dragons don't stay with their young, so obviously the females do. So if they stay intact, or not intact, in contact with each other, they I would assume, would be ready to answer Selene, like, the second she's like, hey, I'm rounding everybody up. Because, like, one, she'd be their mother, and two, she would be absurdly more powerful than, than anything that they could really refuse. And Selene is clearly not somebody that is good at taking disappointment. I mean, I was gonna say, like, she's not one to fuck around, I would assume, when she's too serious, but I mean, like, she definitely was. She wasn't at taking Suzaku as seriously as she wanted to. It's just the same thing I said about Natsu when Natsu got taken down by Suzaku. That I guess it's a different story, because if she ended up actually like fighting full power and was like, it was acknowledged that she was at her full strength, Suzaku just defeated her, to be like, well, then obviously like Suzaku plus main cast equals done Selene. Not even like main cast, literally put like one other character in there to help Suzaku. Like, you could have Wendy, you can have Gray. I mean, I don't know what like Gray and Urza would do entirely. Like, Wendy could buff them with the Dragon Slayer enchantment, but like, just adding Natsu would just be like so much extra firepower. Adding Wendy would just be such a huge amount of support on top of having Dragon Slaying magic that could hurt Selene and whatnot. But everything right now points to Selene having another spotlight in an arc. Whether she's going to be the main bad guy focus is a different story. I'm kind of actually really hoping that we get a joint setup with her. Like, at least if she's not going to be the focus of like an arc, if we see her having interactions with like whoever's next. And like, Ignia and Viernes are still out there. We know Ignia, obviously, we've seen him, but we don't really know anything about Viernes. And the thing about Viernes, like him being extra secretive that Mercephobia has never even met him, would mean that he's a hard dude to find. And Selene can go anywhere she wants, whenever she wants. So her having the ability to just go to wherever Viernes is would make complete sense. Like, as well as her knowing where he is and knowing aspects about him would make sense. Because if she can go anywhere she wants, she's gonna like be able to find out any information relatively that she wants. But the fact that Majima is having her set for later, because like when you compare like her versus the Alder and Mercephobia, Selene had more screen time and more to her like than the other two had for at least half their arcs. Like, Mercephobia is a little different. Like, he obviously had the whole redemption thing going on, like trying to atone for what he did. Alderaan was more of like, the dragons were just outright bad. They're just problems. They're not like Selene, where clearly Selene can be not bargained with, but there's definitely a means to communicate and potentially make trade, I would assume, with Selene. Like, you just have to do it carefully, whereas like Alderaan, he's not going to do anything for any humans whatsoever. I really doubt, even if you like gave him some amazing scenario, he'd probably say no, or he'd lie to you and then attack you and trick you. But Selene making it to another arc makes me very happy. Very, very pleased. The whole stuff with Altaface was a little strange, because like we knew the hands rather were everywhere at this, like as soon as we got into Elentir, they'll just apparently appear. And like Ferris even was bringing up how, oh well, these are normal here. So if the whole layout was for those hands and we didn't really know anything about them, we get to Altaface, I don't think the fact that Mishima made it the way that it is going to be just like, we defeat it here and that's it. I think it's definitely going to come back with something way more important, because like the idea that these two systems just exist in their respective worlds, like obviously Face was in Earthland and Altaface was in was in Elentir, it just makes me assume that somebody created them, somebody spawned these creatures up, or like these devices, because we know before Selene, Altaface didn't have like any form of sentience. I would imagine he's just some big underground weird multi-hand energy dude who just like feeds off magic and whatnot. I guess really like exuding magic instead. I mean, he's got to eat something. I would assume that he can absorb some magic, or whatever he would need for nourishment. Either way, everything that went down this chapter, it's just the regular signs of like a wrap up, like was they're moving towards. I'm hoping that this counts as one of the the expedition kind of transition arcs, rather. I think I just want to say, like, I usually call them like transition chapters, where it's like you have an arc and you have a couple chapters in between it that are either setup or character stuff or relatively anything before getting into another arc. That to me, I always refer to as the like a whole transition period. So right now with this whole setup, again, I'm hoping for at least one. I don't really know if it'll count. It's because if we gotta wait a month plus to get the wherever this is going next, like if we got like a scene of Selene showing where she went, what she's doing, then I'd be perfectly fine with like a 2 to 3 chapter transition period where things are kind of mostly just like, again, character stuff, maybe some world building, some funny stuff. But for the most part, I'd be okay with it if we got something like that from Selene, like maybe going to meet Viernez again, Ignia, maybe her sons, maybe there's some other entity we don't even know about. So that to me at least makes the most general sense for how Selene and all them are gonna go. If she just goes somewhere and just goes to hang out, I think it'd be really weird. If she goes to like talk to Viernez or Ignia or something, I could see that way more. Like if she ended up going to her sons to see like if her sons are okay, because I would assume that she didn't know that like much. She just knew that Carnegie like died. She didn't know anything about him, like who killed him, like how exactly did it happen, what happened to his remains afterwards, and obviously like the Dragoneers ended up eating him. So it would make a lot of sense from Selene's standpoint to go and figure out where her sons are. Especially like if she goes if she goes to like a dragon den and like one of her sons is like fully intact, fully ready to fight, and you put him against Suzaku, obviously Suzaku is going to be, I would assume, stronger, unless like one of Selene's kids is like drastically more powerful than I imagine, like not shy off of, like if they were one tier below Selene, I'd be really impressed. But I mean, regardless, Suzaku is so beat up and it doesn't look like he's really got much magic, so I would assume that he would just he would have a terrible time and get mauled. But the overall lay of the chapter had stuff to do with Elentir. We see like Altaface collapse. Again, I don't think Mishima had this put in just to end the arc or to suddenly change direction. I think that the Altaface stuff was planned, and it doesn't seem like things are really going to just be fixed now. I think that there's going to be some form of follow-up, some form of alteration in the setup right now. Like there's some parts during it, like first off you get like some nice parts. They're like, all right, what we got to do next is they got to escape. And then you see all the main cast are running away enough to get crushed by all this rubble, and that's when Lucy summons Virgo, and Virgo obviously does her thing, digs a hole, gets them out of there. It's funny because Virgo's power is either really useful or it's really useless. Like, in most cases, like, her just digging holes is not going to do a whole lot for a lot of characters. But stuff like this, like, being able to just kind of say nope out of this collapsing place and just have her dig yourself a way out. Like, she just, like, spins and then goes into the ground and stuff. Like, from what we've seen. Like, at least from the anime stuff. Or she just does the diving leap and it just immediately goes down. There's no digging. She just swims into the earth. It seems to just dig holes as she goes. But I was actually really impressed with the Whiteout Village, because after Altaface was destroyed, they're like, all right, we gotta do the whiteout ritual. And then bam, they set up like this big beam that's coming out of their church, and it has to go over the entire planet, because the whole thing is sort of like, we're gonna cleanse the world in the hands, we're gonna bring harmony and balance back to the magic within Elentir. So that would mean that the entirety of this planet was just affected by their spell. Granted, it's not an attack spell, but I mean, it is pretty much a giant magic AoE kind of thing. It's just like, all right, we're going to destroy all the magic for like half a second, or at least drastically render it out, I would assume. Because otherwise, how exactly would they Like, how exactly would they go about it? It just gets destroyed, but like the other characters aren't losing their magic. Maybe it's different, or they just weren't hit by the amount. I guess they are underground still for the most part, so they're not going to be affected. But it's like Happy and Carla. I don't really know. Maybe it's specifically towards the hands, and there's something different about like just the general way that they can read magic in this world versus like going over to Edelus or going over to Earthland and stuff. Everything following that seemed to be much more comfortable, much more kind of like them just following up the events. And Lucy's narration was one of the things that really set the, like, it set the stage for me. It set like a general idea that this isn't over. There's still way more to come, and like both Celine and things related to Celine are not even remotely, like, you know, within horizon to end. Because like when Lucy's talking about it, she like mentions a couple regular things. She's just talking how she talks, and she's like saying how the Elentir like people like the Moonlight Beauty Gods were actually from Elentir, so they're gonna stay and be judged like by the law of Elentir. I thought it was actually really funny that if you look at all of the Elentir, like, I don't know if they'd be police or like military officials or whatever it is, if you look at the guy all the way on the left panel, he's just holding like a gun. This dude's out here just with like some form of automatic rifle that he can apparently just like let loose on these guys. Yoko's like seems to be determined that like she's gonna get out and saying how they're gonna regret it. Okune seems completely fine with it, whereas Mimi is way more just like, hey, just so you know, blonde girl, I want to fight you at some point someday again. So I thought that was a really nice moment. But on top of like the oddness of like the layout, like when Lucy's reading, when you like pretty much get like her narrative from what I'm assuming is her writing in her journal or something, is like saying how like, oh, you know, we essentially saved the Whiteout Village, but also the world. That's at least how it feels. And the fact that it's not like, oh yeah, we did do it. You know, there's clearly a quiet breadcrumb like thing that Mishima is leaving there. It just seems very clear. It's kind of like when we heard the whole thing about Mercephobia when he was like saying like, oh, I don't know anything about Viernes. He's a big secret. That to me puts him at something like, you could have Celine just go there. Go to wherever Viernes is, because again, she shouldn't even be able to know where he is. She also can just go there right now. Like, wherever she went, she could be there right now. It's just going to be a bit between you actually find out what Celine is up to. Like, where did she go, and what is her plan going to be now? I still really like the idea of she's going back to, like, her dragon lair, and there's going to be a bunch of eggs and stuff everywhere. It's just like an old classical style, big dragon brooding nest. And Celine is just not having any form of problems from anybody at that point. She's just going to be like, listen, you do anything here, I'm going to outright kill you. I just would assume would make sense. I mean, we know that the female dragons care for their young, so I would assume that Celine would care about any of her offspring. Like, we know from, obviously, the interactions between her and Kuranugi, that, or her and Suzaku about Kuranugi, she got really upset when she revealed that that was one of her sons that Suzaku and Georg ended up taking down and Suzaku consuming. So that will also follow more into like my whole thing about like her going and finding her other sons and getting them on her team, and she's got like a whole dragon squad. But you know, we have some regular just kind of occurrences. Like they're saying like, oh, Natsu, during the couple days that we were partying over what happened, he ended up destroying a bunch of the buildings that they worked to fix. Gray ended up getting in trouble for like public nudity. Urza was like trying to break things up and ended up getting a fight herself, just like how you would assume Fairy Tail would go over in this room, especially like treating them to like whatever they want, get them as much food and drinks and stuff. They're gonna get out of control. But furthermore, Lucy is like narrating, and she's proving like a good point of, you should be aware that if a mangaka is setting up something and doing something specific, even if it's like impatient, like I don't like where this is at right now, you gotta wait for the reveal and like actual evidence of what exactly happened to see if you like don't like it or not. Because like this chapter, I gotta be like, I saw some people being upset about certain aspects of it. I don't really see what the problem was, because obviously the hands and stuff were set up from the beginning, and Mishima just found a way to, you know, either he had it pre-planned, this is what, like how it was going, which I think so, because like the Moonlight Beauty Gods fell in a reasonable amount of time within like range of each other, and then secondly got to like Celine and Suzaku again. Suzaku ended up catching her using that freaking abyss and putting in a very deadly slash upon Celine. So it's like you honestly think that Celine would be fully done and Mishima just doesn't finish it off right there? I don't think so. Clearly, he's setting things up. Like Elentir, though it feels a bit like a little bit of a setup arc almost. Like we got the battles, we got a lot of world building and stuff. We're moving characters along in the story of the 100 Years Quest, what the Dragon Gods are up to and everything, and hopefully more about Elentir too. But we did get confirmation actually really good when Suzaku was like talking about how like Fairy Tail is bad and he's gonna do what he needs to for his guild. Because that clearly meant that it was just a misunderstanding. Once they start working together, like at least squash beef, they probably are going to be okay with each other for the most part. I don't really know what would happen if like they did this. Like, would they just join the 100 Years Quest together or what? Otherwise, or at least I guess, regardless of, Suzaku is definitely a good guy, and it seems like all it would really take is for them to kind of like have a conversation and he'd calm down and probably not try and murder them upon sight. Other than that, like, the stuff with Ferris I thought was really nice, but like when Lucy was like talking and she's like saying, oh, like something's really bothering everybody, we don't know what happened to Celine and Suzaku, and that's again clearly Mishima laying breadcrumbs down to something. But I know some people were going to be like, yeah, everyone's mad about it. It's like, well, you got to find out why they went to why Celine went to wherever she ended up going that also caused Suzaku to follow. Like, there could be a lot of things. Other Dragon God, like I said, some of her sons, or her dragon lair somewhere. There's a lot of possibilities for what exactly Celine could be after and what exactly she's going for. But as of right now, like, Suzaku and her disappeared, and we don't know how long it is. I don't think there was a date of like how long it's been. Let me see. Like, was there anything about like a date? I'm just rereading the chapter right now. I don't see anything about a date, like, within of, like, how long it's been. It's gotta be at least, I would assume, a couple days. Like, it would just make sense. Actually, when they say it, well, it's like, well, it didn't take long for, like, them to do stuff. Like, Natsu went and destroyed a bunch of buildings and whatnot. But it's still something that I would like to know, just knowing how long are they in there. Because they even brought up, like, how, oh, well, we're out here doing this, you know, and she's like, oh, no, we don't know what those other two are. Like, I was talking about Celine Zuck. No idea where they are. Clearly not in Elentir. Wherever they are is super intriguing. But Lucy's, like, saying, there was one other thing that we were worrying about, and, you know, we suddenly came to this world, and now our guildmates are at home. Like, everybody in the guild is just kind of chilling and not doing, like, their most optimal setup. I would imagine they're generally pretty fine, because they already knew that the main cast people were going to be gone on this quest anyway, because like Gildarts left and took years before he came back. Like, it was at least 3 or so years, and Gildarts wasn't aware of it, which is obviously had to do with like when Lizana died and stuff. Well, quote unquote dead, because it was 2 years prior in the story that it happened, and then Gildarts wasn't aware of it. So obviously Gildarts coming back, it would have to be somewhere within that range. Either way, everything going on in them, I would assume that like the characters should be aware. Like, it's really like, I get why Lucy is like upset and like a little bit agitated about it, but I would assume that like anybody would be like, oh yeah, I understand, you guys are off doing something real big. And Ferris as well. Ferris had a really good part when, feel better, I could punch you. Lucy's trying to object. Gray and Wendy weren't for it either. When Natsu kind of kept insisting, and Urza puts her hand out. I think Urza was aware. I think she just knows Natsu like that. He knows that like sometimes he can be really, really kind-hearted, and he's like a good guy at heart, but for the most part, he can obviously be a scoundrel. And he's like saying, you controlled our friends and we had to fight. But he's like, yeah, that got me fired up though, because like none of like the characters were actually like murdered. Nobody in the main cast, like they all seem relatively fine. Like outside of like general scrapes and cuts, I wouldn't imagine it'd be that bad. It mostly probably be like the ship ride home. They'd be like probably really bored and like behind on a bunch of stuff. But when Natsu goes to punch, he's just really chill about it. Like I said, he's a nice dude. He's like, oh cool, listen, this is good. And he like makes this nice comment like, oh, I said thank you from the heart. And just giving his full honesty with that nice knuckle the forehead. Would it be a knuckle to forehead hug? Some form of knuckle to forehead high five. Regardless, it was really nice to see how that went. And then at the end, they're like, okay, well, they are good here. We're going back to Earthland. Maybe they're like, it's going to be something of similar to the Celestial Spirit. Not like the same, like a day is 3 months, Well, like, what if it's just a slight acceleration? Like, it's like every single day is like 4 days or something, and within the span of time that the character have been there, some events went down, and so, you know, some chaos ensues. There's something going on that, like, they're gonna need everybody for, especially like the Fairy Tail main cast members. Because, like, outside of them, like, the guild has, like, they got Loxus, they've got like Mira and Guildarts, but like a lot of the characters aren't very powerful. There's, cool, I remember when you guys were more of a threat, like way more of a thing, but it was a really nice chapter, really feel good. I liked a lot, obviously. Like, I very much loved the fact that Celine is going to be in future arcs, at least one other future arc. Like, I'm really hoping Mishima can have her deliver with some form of lore, some form of vital information, because we didn't get that from Mercephobia. We got it from Merciful. We didn't get anything like that from Alderaan, so hopefully Celine will give us some form of general idea. Like, she could give some form of way to harm dragons without having the Dragon Slayer attitude or something. If there was one thing that she is clearly very well up and kept on, it's like her assets and keeping people, like, you know, pretty much just like controlling people and like figuring out how to manipulate them. She seems very clearly able to do that, but also I don't imagine a lot of people are going to turn her down. Like, too much. Like, good luck with that, sir. I don't know. I really can't wait to see where this goes now. The only problem, obviously, I had with this was the fact that it's now 2 weeks for another chapter, and that next chapter might be another transitioning chapter, like another point of just kind of getting from point A to point B to point C to, you know, continue each of those stops. And I don't know. Like, we're at a very strange spot. So if we can get, like, hopefully some a little bit like pace sped up for the next arc, like, we could get there and get like the filler while they're there, but well, not filler, but like extra stuff to kind of distract, just because, like, I want to see where exactly we're going and which god is next, where, like, Celine obviously went to, who really knows, but the characters that are still out there, you know, doing whatever they have to for Ignia and Viernes, they're gonna have to be prepped to fight next. Whichever one, like, arrives, I guess, unless, like, there's some other dragon that gets, like, artificially boosted up to this level. I mean, I still believe that there are some dragons out there hiding in the world, and they just don't want to be found. Like, the only one that was, like, a little, like, how did Akon Logan not just fly over and see it at one point was Alderaan. But I don't imagine he's just max speed free flying around the planet every single day on a regular basis. That'd be exhausting. But, yeah, good chapter, really solid. Got more some stuff with the setup, like, obviously with Celine. Lucy's narration was very ominous, and how, like, it's very clear that there's some stuff getting set up that doesn't look like it's gonna go well for, like, a lot of people. Like, there seems to be, like, a little bit of a darker side kind of, like, blooming up. So we'll see exactly on that aspect. That's definitely something that I really want to follow up upon from Mishima, is, like, finding out if we're gonna get something kind of like a modern day version of Tartaros. It doesn't have to have nearly as many crazy plot points, but if we could get like that, but way spookier, like maybe a little bit spookier, since it's like digital release and stuff. I don't know. Either way, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this chapter, and I'm trying to think of something just to add for, like, the question at the very end of the chapter. I mean, you could just, like, add, like, what exactly, like, which dragon god do you really see next, Viernes or Ignia? Because I would assume it's Ignia at the very end, whereas when it comes to when it comes to Viernes could show up at any point in time. So we'll see exactly what Mishima has planned for that, and, like, where he's going to take it. I would really just want to see where Celine is heading before the, like any form of transitionary periods. Because then it's like, okay, well, then we get back to the next arc. And one thing about going to a new arc is you have to make sure that, like, any additional stuff that's added is going to be it's going to be a hot topic. Like if suddenly Fairy Tail added something like Gorgons or something, like, there would have to be something about, like, Gorgons, like a chapter before you get to whatever, or at least a chapter at some point, like, explaining some form of information on them. So, did I say Worgen? Isn't that, is it Worgen? Freaking Lord of the Rings? I'm trying to remember. Either way, again, solid stuff. I really want to figure out what Mishima has plans for the whole face stuff, because that to me is one of the weirder parts of it. And though it's clear that, like, it's got some form of connection, we have no idea what the connection is. Does somebody make them? Is there a way that they just kind of, like, naturally form? Who exactly knows? Also, if does that mean that if Selene was in Earthland, then she could have made all the faces kind of gain sentience and start talking? Because that would be pretty spooky, I'm not going to lie. Either way, like I said, I keep trying to wrap it up, but then I have some other things to say. Because like the chapter for the most part was about the, like, a lot of like the meat was in the narrations and stuff between or from Lucy, because like a lot, like majority of pretty much everything else, I really just want to speculate and kind of talk about things, and really just sit down and figure out, okay, well, what exactly is this gonna potentially mean? Like, where are all the like little breadcrumbs and stuff that Natsu maybe laid himself, or like maybe Mishima just puts it in a side panel, or there's something there that we just don't really have any idea like what it actually is, but we'll see. Otherwise than that, comment below. Tell me again, do you think it's Bierna or Ignia next? Did you like the chapter? Because I thought it was pretty good. It's just one of those ones where it's like, okay, they're in apparently an introduction arc, because this is not the end of Selene. So like Altaface was an alright end arc villain, just as an antagonist, because it was obviously leading to the information of like where did all these hands come from, like who's controlling them and stuff, and now we have this guy. And it being destroyed, I really want to know what's going to happen to magic in Elentir now, and like where things are really kind of like go now that like they don't have Altaface. Like, is it still going to say transcendent magic? Is this just how it's supposed to be a default? It's still transcendent, and it's because of Selene that once the Altaface kind of gained control, that it was where it started to really get out of hand, however long ago it was prior. So we'll figure it out. Like I said, comment below, thumbs up the video, but from the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. From that, appreciate it. Subscribe, and thank you all for listening. Bye.